I'll admit I wasn't a model man. So I don't hold what somebody did years ago against them, because I've matured as I've got older, but there's things that I've said and done that would be terrible if my children or grandchildren heard that. It's not the way you want to treat women, but I do know how men talk in a locker room.
So, David, thoughts?
So, Carol, I agree with Lynn that Melania Trump could have spent more time in that interview talking about the private Donald Trump, the man that she knows. That would have helped more, perhaps, for his campaign. That being said, I thought she came across as comfortable, credible. She came across as someone who sincerely supports her husband even now. That being said, the one thing that didn't come across as credible was this idea that Billy Bush egged Donald Trump on. Donald Trump did not have to be dragged kicking and screaming right into that conversation. It would have been a more effective interview if it had come out a week ago, not yesterday, but the prior Monday, right after the Access Hollywood tape had come out, and if Donald Trump had been sitting next to her. I think that would have done more good for the Trump campaign to signal to their core supporters, like the gentleman who you just showed in that clip, that all was well with the Trump campaign, that they were focused on the issues, that they were a united front moving forward. A week went by with Trump lashing out at the media, lashing out at women accusing him of sexual assault. That has not done any favors for his campaign, and it's reflected in recent polls.
I will say that many voters told me in Ohio that all of this sex stuff is deflecting from Hillary Clinton's weaknesses, like the controversy that just came out that Manu Raja was talking about. They're concerned about that email controversy, especially in light of the FBI notes that appeared to show a State Department employee tried to influence the Bureau on Clinton emails. So shouldn't the media, and this is what voters told me, shouldn't the media be talking more about that, Lynn?
Well, and we are. There is, and another way to get even more attention on the Clinton emails is for Donald Trump to be disciplined enough to devote his speeches to Hillary Clinton and the WikiLeaks emails instead of talking about baseless charges about a national rigging of an election system. So he is a powerful messenger he knows that. And instead of blaming the media for not doing enough or this or that, a presidential candidate has a powerful platform. He decides not to use it by going off on his tangent of a baseless charge of a rigged election system. And there is a trove of information on these emails. And by the way, everyone listening, you could go to WikiLeaks.org and look for yourself. Just type in some names, type in Hillary Clinton, type in debate, type in people in the news, and the emails pop up.
All right, I have to leave it there. Lynn Sweet, David Swerdlick. Actually, stick around because we're going to continue the conversation after the break. But right now, I want to take my viewers out to the White House. This is a live look from the South Lawn, where the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi is arriving for meetings with President Obama. This all caps off tonight with the president's final state dinner. Mario Batali will be in the kitchen. Gwen Stefani will be performing, so it should be quite the shindig. Also to come in the newsroom. So much for shying away from Trump's voter fraud warning. Looks like Mike Pence just doubled down. Donald Trump and running mate Mike Pence may finally be in sync. On Tuesday, Pence echoed Trump's claims that the election is rigged, and he warned about voter fraud.
Voter fraud cannot be tolerated by anyone in this nation because it disenfranchises Republicans, independents, Democrats, conservatives, and liberals in America. And so I encourage you. Demand that our public officials are upholding the integrity of the vote, but do all you can to respectfully participate in the process and ensure the outcome we can all be proud of.
All right, so what Pence just said belies what he said just 3 days ago. On Sunday, Mike Pence said the campaign would absolutely accept the results of the election. With me now to talk about this is Lynn Sweet and David Swerdlick. Welcome back. So Lynn, what does Mike Pence mean when he says do all you can to respectfully participate in the process and ensure the outcome, an outcome we can all be proud of?
I'd say I have to work more on decoding that exactly, because it's still a suggestion that there is a problem with the process. And when you talk about voting, Carol, as you know, there are multiple jurisdictions in each area that control votes. If you have a complaint, it's usually anchored to a geographic place. You have a problem in name, city, precinct, and place, or there's fraud here or there. Now, there have been many studies that show that there is not, in recent years, any basis for saying there's widespread voter fraud. So when Pence talks about it as if something is happening now with no evidence, it is perhaps another way to turn out the base Trump vote by rallying the troops to say you got to be there. Now, what some Democrats are concerned about, that you could also hear those remarks perhaps or amplified by supporters, as a way of intimidation. So I think everyone has to be very knowledgeable when they get to the polls. Have your to know what's going on. And I think local election officials might also just be saying we have to just make sure everything's right, which they monitor things always anyway. But I think you'll hear more that this may be an interpretation to rally his base and try to discourage people who might think they're going to get hassled on the polls from going. That's just one interpretation.
I have heard that. So David, supporters at a Trump rally in Wisconsin, I'm going to take you back to last night. Let's say they were passionate. They chanted their hatred of the media. They shouted, "Tell the truth," while Trump told them that the system is rigged. And like Lynn said, Democrats are worried that these voters, these supporters, will take their anger to the polls and interfere in the process. Is that a valid concern?
It is a concern. Republicans are feeding a line to Trump's core supporters. That's simply wrong. As Lynn noted, there are studies by Loyola Law School, by the Advancement Project, by the Brennan Center, showing that, yes, there are these isolated cases around the country of voter fraud. It has affected local elections. There's no evidence that it has affected any of our recent presidential elections, or that it can affect any of our recent presidential elections. Ari Berman from NPR recently wrote a piece a few weeks ago for us at the Washington Post showing just how tough it would be to rig a presidential election, and the fact that the Trump campaign sort of keeps putting this out there as if it's this ongoing and active concern among voters is a disservice to their own supporters, disservice to Democrats, a disservice to everybody, to the process. Carol, can I just add that it wasn't just Pence who said a couple of days ago that he would respect the outcome of the election. In the first debate, Donald Trump said, without any caveats, that if he lost the election, he would support the outcome of the election. So this is a switch by the Trump campaign, by Donald Trump, sort of laying the groundwork to make excuses if it doesn't go their way.
So the Clinton camp appears to be worried about this, because they just released this ad. It features the Good Wife actor Josh Charles. He plays lawyer on that show. The ad is calling for lawyers to help in key battleground states. Watch. Did this right, right, Lynn? The Clinton camp wants lawyers manning the phones in case any voter is interfered with, and they'll have someone to call to ask for advice. Is this necessary?
It's routine in real campaigns, even without this controversy, Carol, to have squads of lawyers to go out for ballot integrity, voter protection, and they're taking it to another level, including, by the way, to bring snacks. So this is just having a call for even more lawyers to staff more precincts. That's where you detect problems. That's where you run to court for a restraining order, or to keep a poll open later, or if there's questions about ballots, to make sure that they're properly handled, why the matter is adjudicated, or if somebody's challenged, as to be able to vote. So these are things that if the Trump campaign were highly organized, they would be doing anyway, and especially. So let's just point out what's not happening in the Trump campaign. If you really thought that there's going to be widespread voter fraud and the election is stolen, where are the squads of lawyers for Trumps out there announcing that we're going to be in thousands of precincts in election days? That's what organization is. That's what we're not seeing.
All right, I have to leave it there. Lynn Sweet, David Swerdlow, thanks to both of you. Still to come in the newsroom, Hillary Clinton pumping out big names and big money to historically red states. Will it pay off?
The Clintons, from dead broke to worth hundreds of millions. So how did Hillary end up filthy rich? Pay-to-play politics. Staggering amounts of cash poured into the Clinton Foundation from criminals, dictators, countries that hate America. Hillary cut deals for donors, sold out American workers, exploited Haitians in need. She even handed over American uranium rights to the Russians. Hillary Clinton only cares about power, money, and herself.
I'm Donald Trump. It's round 3.
My argument is not with his supporters, it's with him.
When Bernie Sanders said she had bad judgment, she has really bad judgment.
We are moments away from the opening bell on Wall Street. Traders are hoping U.S. stocks will follow a global market rally. So let's head to the New York Stock Exchange and CNN Money business correspondent Allison Kosik. Hi, Allison.
Good morning, Carolyn. As the opening bell rings, we expect to see stocks rebound off of yesterday's losses. And at the same time, investors have their eye on the presidential election. Wall Street is now putting its bets on a win for Hillary Clinton. How can we tell? It's not so much what investors are saying, it's what they're doing. The market moves are showing us, like what the Mexican peso is doing and what gas, gold, and stocks are doing as well. You look at the price of gold, it's falling, and that means investors aren't looking for a safe haven because the more predictable Clinton is expected to win. The peso is jumping because the thought is without Trump in office, the U.S.-Mexico relationship won't be hurt. And gas prices aren't spiking. They're holding steady, which is a plus for investors and consumers. Even investor polling data points to Clinton. 60% of investors now say Clinton is the best candidate for the stock market versus 40% who say Trump is. Now, there is one indicator pointing to Trump, how the S&P 500 has been doing since August. It's down 2%, which actually works in Trump's favor. But Carol, even the analyst who came up with that indicator says that should be viewed as a guide, never gospel. Carol?
Will do. Allison Kosik live from the New York Stock Exchange. Download the CNN Money Stream app. It's business news personalized, the only place you can follow the companies, business leaders, and topics that matter most to you. Download it now on your iPhone or Android device. And good morning, I'm Carol Costello. Thank you so much for joining me. As Hillary Clinton hunkers down for final debate preps, her camp is flexing its muscle in historically solid red states. Her circuit's barnstorming Arizona. Bernie Sanders is there today. Chelsea will be there tomorrow. Michelle Obama will travel to Arizona on Thursday. Add that to the $2 million spent on ads. In Texas, ads are about to run highlighting an endorsement from the Dallas Morning News. Another $1 million spent in Indiana and in Missouri. In the meantime, Donald Trump is in the swing state of Colorado while Mike Pence tours North Carolina. So let's talk about that now with Dan Nowicki. He's the national political reporter for the Arizona Republic, and Chrissy Thompson. She's the Columbus bureau chief for the Cincinnati Enquirer. Welcome to both of you.
Hi, Carol.
Thank you.
Hi, nice to have you here. So Dan, can Hillary Clinton really win Arizona?
Well, this year it's looking like she might be able to. Her husband, Bill Clinton, is the last Democrat to carry Arizona. He did that in 1996 when he was running for re-election. And before that, you have to go way back to 1948 when Harry Truman won Arizona. Besides those, they've always been won by Republicans in presidential elections. But this year with Donald Trump, even though he's made 6 appearances in the state himself, looks like it's a real good chance for the Democrats to turn Arizona blue, at least on the presidential race.
So an exciting race to cover for you this year. So Chrissy, most analysts say Trump should win the state of Ohio, but to do that he has to win Hamilton County, Cincinnati, where you're from. He has to win that big because Hamilton County went for Obama in 2008 and in 2012. Is it possible?
Is it possible for him to win Hamilton County? I think it is possible. You know, what we really need to see is Hamilton County is where Cincinnati is, but it also includes a lot of wealthy suburbs. And what we really need to see is what those educated middle-class voters, educated women, who they decide to vote for, and if the sex-related accusations and the tapes from that were released 2 weeks ago, how those affect some of those voters in those suburbs on the fringe of Hamilton County.
Interesting. So Dan, Hispanics in Arizona, everybody thought with the comments that Donald Trump has made about Hispanics coming over the border, Mexicans coming over the border, that would really energize Hispanics in states like Arizona to head to the polls and vote for Clinton. Do you see that happening?
Well, I think there has been some growth in the Hispanic voter registration. Whether they're all going to turn out this year remains to be seen, but I don't think it's reached kind of the historic levels that some people were anticipating, given all of Trump's rhetoric about immigration and building the wall and his deportation force, etc. 2010, Arizona had a pretty controversial state immigration law called SB 1070, and there's a lot of talk too that would energize Hispanic voters, and that didn't really happen either. So kind of makes you wonder what would really energize Latinos if Trump doesn't do it.
So what is energizing voters in Arizona to lean more toward Clinton then?
Well, I think it's kind of maybe to some degree leaning against Trump. Trump has offended a lot of key constituencies in Arizona, Latino voters, as you mentioned, but also there's a lot of Mormon voters. Utah gets a lot of attention for the Mormons, but there's also a sizable population of Mormons in Arizona who are not happy with his kind of playboy lifestyle. Obviously they respect Mitt Romney's opinion of Trump. Jeff Flake, who is a U.S. Senator here, who's sparred with Trump, also is Mormon. And so I think that's a pretty big block that usually reliably goes with the Republicans who he's turned off. He's also, picked fights with John McCain, picked fights with Jeff Flake. They all have networks of Republicans who, under normal circumstances, would be inclined to support whoever the GOP presidential nominee is, but they're kind of turned off to Trump.
Interesting. So in Ohio, Trump is doing better there, Chrissy, than in other swing states. Why is that?
Yeah, usually the reason that we point to has to do with demographics. The state has a higher percentage of its population that is white working class people, that is people who lack a college degree. One of the highest percentages among swing states, and those are folks who have tended to support Trump's anti-trade rhetoric, especially in Ohio. That's the number one issue I hear from those folks when I'm talking with them here in the state. Another reason is we have a lower than average percentage of Latinos in our state, and that if it continues to stay kind of as low as it is, will make us less and less a mirror of the rest of the country as years go forward. So while we may end up voting with the presidential winner this year, in the next 4 or 8 years, we could see Ohio becoming less and less like the rest of the country.
I hope not. Being from Ohio, I like that Ohio's place in history like that, but we'll see.
We love being the bellwether.
I know we do. Dan Nowicki, Chrissy Thompson, thanks for joining me this morning. Still to come in the newsroom.
This is it. Round 3.
My argument is not with his supporters, it's with him.
When Bernie Sanders said she had bad judgment, she has really bad judgment.
The final debate tomorrow. Live coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Newsroom, 21 days, 270 electoral votes. We take a look at this road to victory and how each side can seal the deal.
This is it. Round 3.
My argument is not with his supporters, it's with him.
When Bernie Sanders said she had bad judgment, she has really bad judgment.
It all comes down to this.
He wants to talk about what we've been doing the last 30 years. Bring it on.
The election of Hillary Clinton would lead to the destruction of our country.
Clinton, Trump, the final debate tomorrow. Live coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern on.
Not everyone has to wait 3 weeks to vote on Election Day. Take a look at this line in the state of Georgia. This is the first day of early voting in that state. Wow! You can see more than 1,000 people stood in line to cast their vote in Gwinnett County, many of them getting there 2 hours before the doors even opened. The democratic process at work. It's a beautiful thing. Joining us now from Las Vegas, the site of tomorrow's big presidential debate, Mark Preston, CNN Politics Executive Editor. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Carol. Good morning. How are you?
Do you see those lines
So
in
I'll tell you
Georgia?
what. Well, I got to tell you what. I mean, it is amazing now that we are seeing this process now finally coming to an end. We're seeing people not only in Georgia but in several other states right now who are getting out there and early voting. This is very key now to both political parties because the more people you can get to the vote early, can get them out now, they can then focus on those voters that are a little bit harder to persuade to get to the polls. Now the question is, who is this really going to benefit, Carol? And we're not quite sure yet. We haven't seen the early voting totals. But if you are to believe the ground operation that Hillary Clinton has put in place over the past couple of years, you might have to think that this might actually benefit her, Carol.
Traditionally, does early voting benefit Democrats?
Well, they certainly have a better ground operation than we've seen from Republicans. Certainly in most recent time, Barack Obama was able to build an operation in 2008 and then 2012 that certainly surpassed John McCain and Mitt Romney's. But, you know, we'll see what happens this time. The problem for Donald Trump right now, though, Carol, is that he really has no ground operation in many of these states. He doesn't have the money. He didn't put in the time to do so. And we haven't seen that kind of activity that we have seen on the Democratic side. But look at a state like Georgia, a state that should be ruby red, that he shouldn't have to worry about, but it really is a state now that Democrats are trying to make a play, as we're seeing in Arizona and other states as well.
Okay, so take us through the map. What states are still in play?
All right, well, let's just take, if we throw the map up there right now, let's just talk about the baseline right now. If the election were held today, Hillary Clinton, according to CNN estimates, would win. She'd get 272 electoral votes. Donald Trump would get 196. For Donald Trump to get to the 270 threshold, follow this path. He needs to win Florida, he needs to win Ohio, and he wins to win North Carolina. Now, he's behind in the polls in North Carolina, barely, but he's behind in the polls significantly in Florida, and he is winning in Ohio. But let's assume that he were to win those three states. He then needs to go on and either win the state of Virginia, the state of Michigan, or the state of Pennsylvania. And he's trailing in all three of those states right now as well. Or, Carol, another option, another pathway possibly, is that he would have to win the state of Nevada, where I stand right now, and also win either Colorado or win Wisconsin. Now, Colorado and Wisconsin are two states right now that Hillary Clinton is up as well, so it's a very narrow path right now for Donald Trump, which even makes this debate tomorrow night that much more important.
So fascinating. Okay, so some of the national polls, Mark, show the race tighter than it seems when you look at the electoral map. Why is that?
Right. Well, because, I mean, if you look across the broad swath, Donald Trump is going to do well in primarily southern states, and you're going to see Hillary Clinton do better on the coasts. And when you put all those numbers together and mix them together, you're going to see a national poll that doesn't always match what we're seeing in the states that are actually going to decide the election. Now, for example, let's look at a state like Arizona right now. Chelsea Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Michelle Obama are all going to go out to Arizona. This is a state right now that should be, no question, in Donald Trump's column. But he's going to have to battle there as well. So, you know, the polls that we're watching right now, while national polls are interesting to follow, it's really the state polls that we should be focusing on.
Yeah, exactly, because I think some people don't quite understand the electoral process, right? So if Donald Trump wins the popular vote in Ohio, he gets 18 electoral votes. That's winner take all, right? Just like in the primary.
Right. Correct. But, you know, having said that, but he needs to get to 270 electoral votes in total, and if you add up all the states where Hillary Clinton's ahead right now, where Donald Trump is, he doesn't get there, and yet she does. So the national polls, even though they look like they're tighter in some cases, they're not necessarily reflective of where the race is right now.
Right, because in California, they have a lot more electoral votes because it's a bigger, more populous state, correct?
Correct. States like California and New York are Democratic strongholds, and those are in her column. The state of Texas right now is in Trump's column. However, Hillary Clinton is a lot closer than she should be in that state, a state that is, you know, traditionally a Republican state.
All right, Mark Preston, thanks so much for making it easy to understand. We do appreciate it.
This is it. Round 3.
My argument is not with his supporters, it's with him.
When Bernie Sanders said she had bad judgment, she has really bad judgment.
It all comes down to this.
He wants to talk about what we've been doing the last 30 years. Bring it on.
The election of Hillary Clinton would lead to the destruction of our country.
Clinton, Trump, the final debate tomorrow. Live.